Welcome to this version of IPA Talk. I'm Sue Holmes, Deputy Executive Director for Professional Development here at IPA, and joining me today is Mary Reynolds from the State Board. Mary, would you share with us what your title is at the State Board of Education?
Sure. I am the Executive Director of Innovation and Secondary Transformation. It's a mouthful.
It is, but we're so happy to have you here today. One of the things that we really have struggled with as we've talked about the new ESSA accountability model is what exactly this new college and career readiness indicator actually contains. And so we know that eventually it's going to really account for 6.25% of an overall high school's accountability score. As we've talked around the state about this particular indicator, a lot of questions have come up about the details. How are we going to collect this information? How are we going to report it to the state board? And exactly what are some of the components that are in this particular indicator? So just in general, talking about college and career readiness and the indicator, it is one of the new school quality and student success indicators. And so as you look at that from the state board's perspective and an overall academic achievement perspective, what do you sense is the purpose of this new indicator and the importance for our students?
The indicator really is intended to be multiple measures, not just one pathway for all students. And it's really intended to give that idea of whether a student has met certain expectations to be ready for what happens after high school. So it's not meant to be a one-size-fits-all, but in fact options for students and for school districts.
And really a student has three avenues to be considered college and career ready by the time they leave high school, one of which is the Distinguished Scholar option. A secondary option is the pathway, the career pathway endorsement. And then a third, perhaps more traditional option for those students that are looking to join the workforce after school, after graduation, the military or community college, college and university. So it is really offering children a lot of different choices, students a lot of different choices about how they might meet that requirement. And we know that there's a variety of components that go into each of those avenues. And so the state board has developed a guidance document. And do you want to talk a little bit about that and what value that might have to our folks that are out in the fields, in the trenches?
Absolutely. We really have taken what the work was done by the P20 Council and the Governor's Children's Cabinet Workforce Readiness Committee work group. And that work really was trying to come up with common definitions across state agencies that would help guide students in their career as K-12, but also beyond that, college or career. And so the idea really is to provide some guidance to districts on what considerations they might look at in terms of a student's preparation. Mm-hmm. And so the idea behind this document really was to, again, share those common definitions and come up to some conclusions that we really want to guide districts in their implementation. So the document can be found on the isbe.net/support page, and that page includes a resource over on the far left-hand side that says College and Career Readiness Indicator. And that document then gives a definition, but it also then gives implementation guidance. Mm-hmm. And that is intended as simple guidance. It's not required. For example, the number of hours that we suggest you might consider for a student's summer employment. It's not required. It's simply guidance.
Great. Well, I can tell you, having talked about the indicators for quite a few months now with our administrators around the state, that the definitions for this particular indicator and the document that you've put together is going to be extremely helpful, because often folks will ask, how should we collect that information? How is it going to be reported to the state? So, Mary, what I think is really awesome and wonderful about this document is that as we've been going around the state, myself and others from the Superintendent's Association and folks from ISBE, trying to talk about this particular indicator has been a little bit difficult because we didn't have clarity on what the definition of the details were. And what this document does is really provide us some very practical tips about what are the definitions, what is the data, what type of data should be collecting, and how will we report that then to the state at the end of the year. So I would really encourage the folks that are watching this to pull that document down and begin to examine that, because I think it's going to provide them a lot of assistance in this year of beginning to get that data. Let's talk a little bit about when the College and Career Ready indicator will actually play a part in the accountability score for high schools.
So the idea is that we're going to begin collecting this data at the end of this academic year.
Okay.
And then we will collect actually 3 years of data before it becomes part of the calculation. So the idea is that we collect the data. It will then become part of the calculation in the 2021 school year that will be reported on the following academic year's report card.
Sure.
So the idea is that we will help schools and support schools in their collection of these data points and these multiple indicators, and then not use it in that calculation until that time.
That's really helpful, and I'm sure that, again, our friends watching are glad for that clarification. So that is one of those grayed out pieces of the pie, if you will, for the next few years in terms of determining that overall school scale score and what that indicator will look like in terms of an indicator score. So good to know that there's a lot of planning that can be done and changes that can be made as the years begin to progress through the new plan.
And the idea is that we're collected in the student information system. So it's intended to be easy in terms of collection. It is going to require somebody to say whether the student was a yes or no in terms of these multiple indicators and components. But it will actually be, hopefully, easy to collect. And the school district will have to collect that type of information and make those determinations. We don't want to know the number of hours that a student worked. We just want to know whether that student met that indicator and that intent. And so it's really up to the districts to help define that.
So what that says to me is there's still a lot of local control in terms
Absolutely.
of defining some of the details.
Absolutely.
Which I think will be a welcome bit of news for folks that are doing more learning about this indicator.
I think if you think about this whole concept of college and career readiness, it's not intended to be a one-size-fits-all. It's really intended to allow that autonomy, that flexibility, and to meet those students where they're at and to help them be successful after high school. So it's really, I mean, if you think about the intent of it, it's not meant to provide hoops and challenges, but in fact opportunities.
Right. And as we've talked, I think also part of that goal is, are we really preparing all kids to be successful after school in terms of moving on into maybe a post-secondary type of environment or into the workforce or into the military, and making sure that they're not leaving our schools without the preparation they need. So,
and this really recognizes those multiple opportunities. So it's not only a college opportunity or only a career opportunity, but in fact recognizing adaptive competencies, recognizing those employability skills, recognizing whether students know how to show up when they're expected and how to perform specific tasks and understand the instructions. So it really is intended to recognize all of those pieces that go into helping that student be successful after high school.
Great. Well, in terms of a school thinking about this, Mary, and really trying to wrap their minds around the details and thinking about the planning that they may have to make locally to adjust to and offer the opportunities that kids will need to be able to be successful and to be labeled college and career ready when they leave high school, what are some of the recommendations you have for schools to think about considering right now?
I think the types of things that are in the academic indicators, for example, transitional math. Transitional math is part of the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act, and it's an opportunity for schools to think about that fourth year of math for the student in multiple pathways. It's actually outlined in law for a technical math, statistics course, as well as a STEM opportunity. It's really intended to cut down on the remediation that's part of the community college system. And so this requires school districts to work with, in cooperation, their community college to come up with that understanding of this course meets those expectations. And then the student would automatically be placed in a credit-bearing college course instead of requiring them to take remedial courses and costing them money. So we really want to encourage schools to think innovatively about offering the transitional math. And it's actually contemplated in the Act that transitional English become after the transitional math rollout. So we're encouraging districts to consider either renaming to meet those expectations or to rework. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go hire a new teacher.
Right.
It may mean simply reworking or modifying what you're currently offering to meet those expectations of that college environment.
So for example, Mary, you might have a traditional fourth-year English class that students have been taking, and what that school district or that school might decide to do is take a look at that curriculum and make sure that the focus in that curriculum, that fourth year, meets the needs of the student so that they don't have remediation needs when they leave high school. So you don't have to completely develop a new course. You could simply take an existing course and make sure it meets those needs and those expectations. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely, and working collaboratively with your local community college to make sure that it meets those expectations.
Great. So Mary, I'm looking through this document and I have questions. What's the best way that I can get additional clarification or find answers to my follow-up questions?
On the isbe.net/support page, you can find a number of infographics that helps describe the accountability system and describe the supports that are in place through Illinois Empower for districts to consider these types of opportunities for students. So the College and Career Readiness Indicator is, again, a resource over on the left-hand side. You can also find it in the report card glossary and look in that document to find answers. In that glossary, you can find, actually for the first time ever, the report card metrics or the business rules that we use to calculate all of the components of the report card. All of those can be found off of the isbe.net/support webpage.
Wonderful. Well, I want to definitely share kudos with the state board for rolling out a lot of detailed graphics and documents that are really helping schools understand and then employ strategies to begin to improve being able to tell their stories with their communities. So Mary, I just want to thank you for coming and joining me today and for helping us really understand more about this new indicator in the ESSA plan. You can find all of the resources in the description below the video. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us here at IPA or reach out to the State Board of Education for more assistance. Thank you for joining us today.